Welcome to Success in Motion. Join us as we dive deep with top leaders, entrepreneurs, and professionals, uncovering strategies to grow, scale, and succeed.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Success in Motion podcast. I'm your host, Michael Bishop, and I am joined by Orlando Robinson. Orlando is an accountant by day and a real estate advocate by night. He's helping individuals avoid foreclosure. I'm super excited to have you on the show, Orlando.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Michael.
Orlando, real estate is something that I love talking about. So we're going to dive into that with you. You have been in the real estate industry for how long now?
I started out wholesaling back in 2016.
Okay.
So and then I got my license in 21. And so for the last 4 years I've been focusing on helping homeowners avoid pre-foreclosure.
What made you move away from wholesaling and wanting to go get a license?
Well, two things. One, at the time I started, that was all I knew. It's funny how I got started. I actually called a bandit sign that says "We buy ugly houses" or whatever because I was curious and I wanted to learn. And the guy, my mentor at the time, was gracious enough to walk me through the process. He thought I was calling to sell my house, and I was just calling to get information. Well, then in Oklahoma, the law passed in 21 that you had to have your license if you want to do wholesaling. So I'd already gotten the real estate bug to get my license, but then when you get this push from the state saying, "Hey, if you don't have your license, you can't do this," it kind of, lights a, fire under you to get going. So that's kind of how I got my license and why. I knew I always wanted to stay in the distressed property space, as I call it, because I just found more value. Yes, monetary value is nice in real estate, but helping people was my main focus. So,
Yeah. And for our listeners, let's just explain what a wholesaler is. You mind taking that?
absolutely, sure. And the wholesaler is somebody who doesn't actually have a license. So what they do is, this scenario, let's say they find somebody who inherits property and that person doesn't want it, doesn't have the funds to do the upkeep and sell it traditionally. A wholesaler will sign a contract with that homeowner saying, "Hey, I will give you X amount of dollars, say $50,000 for your property. It may be worth 100,000. Well, then they'll take that contract and go to an investor and say, "Hey, Mr. Investor, I got this great house. It's worth $100,000. I need 60 grand for it." And he signs a contract with that investor. And so then when they go to closing, the investor sends 60 grand to the title company, the homeowner gets their 50, the investor gets the deed to the property, and the wholesaler makes $10,000. In a nutshell, that's what a wholesale deal is.
So it sounds like a wholesaler is an unlicensed realtor.
Absolutely.
You find somebody who has a property that they want to sell.
Mhm.
You find a buyer, you connect them. The difference is a licensed realtor has a lot more regulations. They also have a lot more exposure. They could put it on a lot of different websites
Absolutely.
to get
Absolutely.
that. Typically, a realtor is going to try for a little bit higher of a price than a wholesaler, and so wholesalers aren't bad in my opinion, but they're not going to get that buyer the top dollar for their property, because if that seller could just go to that investor, they could have gotten an extra 10 grand out of their property. Right?
Exactly.
It creates a middleman. Or if they had
Exactly.
gone to a real estate agent, then they could have gotten whatever market rate is or what the real estate agent says it is.
Right.
Now, one of the benefits to having the wholesaler is it's typically pretty quick, right?
Yeah, most investors can move. The ones that are cash investors can move and close within 7 to 14 days. The
Yeah.
fastest I did one was 7 days. So yeah.
And you're not going to get that kind of turnaround with a realtor.
No, because you have your inspections, you have your due diligence you should do and things like that. So it's an average, it's about 30 days for a typical, real estate deal. But yeah, wholesalers and they kind of know the condition, the investors do, and they have contractors on their team. So they can pretty quickly assess what has to be done, and they're willing to take that risk to avoid the working with the realtor. So
Yeah. So just to lay out the process here,
mhm.
typically when you're working with a realtor, the realtor is going to take a few days to talk to you about your property, convince you to sell it with them.
Mhm.
After that, they're going to take a couple of days to get it listed. Once they get it listed on the market, that can take anywhere from a couple of hours for you to get an offer on it up to a year or more to get it.
Absolutely.
Right? So you're not guaranteed to sell it with a realtor. So
Exactly.
there's some drawback to using a realtor.
Hmm.
And if you were just to go to an investor and find well, they're a little bit harder to find, right? Because typically they work a handful of deals at a time, and trying to find those, you just don't, as the typical home seller, you don't have the connections, right?
Right, right.
And where the wholesaler does provide value is they're constantly reaching out to people trying to find those. And typically they have a group of investors that they work with. And so they can send to different investors. So they always have a buyer and they're always making those connections. So I see value in wholesalers. Not everybody does. I think
That's
that
true.
some of them are shady, right?
Absolutely. That's why
But
they
some
that's
of
why they
them,
created the law because they felt that the state felt that they were really taking advantage of homeowners and not representing them zealously and doing what's in the best interest of the homeowner, just
yeah,
more for themselves. Or they flat out would do a contract, say, hey, I can buy the biggest hurdle was that they were saying, hey, I can buy your property, right? So as a wholesaler, I never told them I personally am going to buy your property. I would say, hey, I actually have a handful of investors. My job is to go out and find the properties for them, and
yeah.
then that fee that I get paid comes out from the investor, nothing out of pocket for the homeowner. And I'm always upfront with them and saying, hey, this is how I run my business. But a lot of wholesalers say, hey, yeah, I can buy it. When in the day, they're going to just go ahead and wholesale it to somebody else.
Yeah, it sounds like you were doing it the right way. You were doing it the honorable way, being straight and upfront with people. It's the guys who were, like you said, were saying they're buying it, but they're not. Those are the ones that gave wholesalers a bad name.
Absolutely.
And
Because they
it,
if the deal falls through, hey, and the way they write contracts were certain clauses, hey, if I can't come up with the funds in 30 days, I can back away. Well, if the homeowner signs that without understanding what's going on, they're expecting something to happen, and then all of a sudden they can't get it wholesaled or whatever, and then they're stuck with the house and worse off than what it were before the
yeah,
house.
especially if they're in a foreclosure situation, a pre-foreclosure situation, because now they just wasted 30 days thinking their problem was solved, but now they're on a deadline, and if they can't sell that house, then chances are they're going to lose it to the bank.
Absolutely.
And and this guy as a wholesaler just came in and wasted a bunch of their time. So I can
Absolutely.
definitely see the the negative of wholesaling, but I also see there's some positive there. And so it you should never feel bad about your experience as a wholesaler. You learned a lot, you helped a lot of people, and you're straightforward.
Absolutely.
Um, so you put that on the back burner. You went and got your real estate license, and tell me about that experience.
Well, for me, it was something that I knew I wanted to do because I always loved helping people. I wanted to find a way to incorporate what I was doing with wholesaling, but at the time, I kicked around the idea of getting my license, and I didn't want to pay broker fees. With a wholesale fee, that's all mine. It wasn't with another agent or a brokerage or whatever, so I was reluctant to split that money. However, I had a mentor who was my broker, who she started out the traditional way where she bought a duplex, lived in one side, rented the other side out, and that's how she got into the industry. But after talking to her, she was like, Orlando, and for 3 years she bugged me, you should get your license. And I was like, well, I don't know. And I was a member of a networking group at the time. Um, it's every week, Orlando. I could show you how to make money. You're not limited to just wholesale deals. It opens up some windows. And finally, right before COVID happened, I decided, you know what, let me just sit down and talk to Kelly and see what she's talking about. And she showed me that, you know what, you're doing yourself a disservice by not getting it because you could serve more people. I said, what do you mean? She
Yeah,
goes, well, not only could you do the wholesale deals, you have different ways to do wholesale deals, meaning that yes, you can wholesale the property, but let's say a homeowner, an investor wants to buy the property, but it's worth less than what they owe. That's a short sale. Real estate teaches you how to do that properly. Then let's say the house is relatively in good condition. You can just relist that property because then it opens up your doors because a lot of investors are looking for sweet spots. They're looking for 70% all in, looking for certain numbers. where if you just relist the property, you can make commission that way. And so she showed me there were more ways to handle the distressed property better than what I was doing before. I could serve more people by having my license. And
Yeah,
so
you still have to pay that broker's fee, but
you do,
if
you
you look
do.
at it, if you look at it right, it's not that you you're just sharing your pie, but you're sharing a piece of a larger pie.
Right, exactly. And one thing I also learned too is that most realtors don't do what I do. They don't know the process. Maybe it's a little scary for them because there's a legal aspect of it. They don't want to, have to figure that out. But I did it before I got my license, so why couldn't I continue on a bigger scale and bigger connection and bigger reach? And that's what intrigued me about, doing it as a licensed realtor.
Nice. I like it. So there is a lot of competition in the real estate world.
Hmm.
Uh, there are a lot of realtors, a lot of people vying for people's attention.
Hmm.
What is it that sets you apart from other real estate agents?
For me, the pre-foreclosure arena or distressed property is kind of my niche. A lot of people want to sell the pretty houses, but for me, the biggest impact I'm making emotionally or to help somebody is helping somebody avoid losing their property, avoid ruining their credit with the foreclosure. By doing it prior to getting my license, I was able to teach seasoned, we're talking 25, 30-year agents how to do what I do. And you're like, wow, I never knew what this was. I never knew how easy this was once yeah, it's a little more legwork, but you're, when you're a realtor, you have fiduciary responsibility to do what's best for the homeowner. And if I can do that with not just pretty houses, I can help somebody with a distressed property. It just spoke to me, you know, because I had been through a bankruptcy before when I was younger. Me and my ex-wife, worked at a company, lost our job, had to file bankruptcy. We were where these homeowners are currently, you know, lost a
Yeah.
house, lost a car. So we were there. And so that's kind of my why for sticking with this for so many years.
Yeah, that gives you the opportunity to have empathy for for these people. You
You
know
have
what they're
to.
going through. It's not just
Absolutely.
oh, I'm sorry you're going through that. It's I'm sorry you're going through that. I know what you're feeling. I've been there.
Mhm.
Let's help you get through that. That is awesome, and it definitely is going to make you more dedicated to what you do because when you go through something as tragic as a bankruptcy, as life disrupting as a bankruptcy, a foreclosure, all of that, it changes how you think about things. And when you have the opportunity to help somebody else who's in that rough situation that you're at, it kind of gives you a sense of, maybe if I can help other people with this, it's worth me having to go through that because I can share that experience.
Absolutely. And that's the reason why I did it because, you know, um, it's funny that I look back that, how I got started. I just happened to randomly call a bandit sign and get information. But, I learned so much about this side of the process before getting my license. I wouldn't say I'm an expert. I'm sure there are people who know more than me about it. But the biggest thing I take away from it is teaching the homeowner or explaining to them the next steps. Because what's scary about this process is that you don't know what's happening next. You know you're behind. You know you're getting phone calls from the bank. You know you're getting statements sent to you in emails. But then all of a sudden they stop, and the next thing you know, you get knocked on the door and you're being served, to appear in court,
And it
to
gets real.
yeah, it becomes real, and then there's a fear there, like, oh my gosh, I've been here so many years, or what are we going to do? So I kind of come in and I tell my clients, I'm not an attorney, but I can show you the next steps. Okay, here's what happened. You got filed on. Now, have you tried to get reinstated? Have you tried this? Have you tried that? You only have a limited amount of time, but there is time to do something. Have you been in constant contact with the attorney now that's involved? And just showing them what's next, educating them on how the process is going to go, gives them some sense of, okay, I can get through this. But sometimes life circumstances prevent them from being able to stay. and I kind of help them with that transition, whether I can help them stay in the property or we have to sell. I kind of guide them through that process.
So let's talk about this this position that you've put yourself in. So you're just a normal, no offense, a normal everyday real estate agent
Right.
who has taken the stance of I'm not out to sell as many properties as I can, but rather I'm out to help as many people as I can who are in a difficult situation. And then
Correct.
you go and you share education with those individuals who are in a tough situation. And if you can help them get out of it, that's great. And they walk away better. You don't actually get paid for that, do you?
No, so let's, for example, if I have a homeowner who I'm able to help them stay in the property, I don't charge them for that help. I don't get a dime from that. The only time I get paid is if I help them sell a property. But my first deal is to help them stay in the property. And if we can find a way, if they have 401k they haven't tapped out, I've even done garage sales for help them do garage sales and get the money to get current. Because at the end of the day, the bank doesn't really care where the money comes from as long as you get current. And sometimes they just need more time than what they currently have. And if I can show them a way to pay what they owe just to get them current, then my thought is if I do that service to these homeowners, that down the road when they're looking to sell or when they know somebody who wants to buy or sell the property, they think of me. So it does come back, maybe not right away, but I've had tons of people call me out of the blue. Hey, thank you for helping me. I'm going to refer my mom to you or my cousin to you. So I've gotten regular real estate deals from doing the right thing with the distressed properties.
Yeah, doing the right thing is always going to get you payment over doing the wrong thing, right?
Karma's real.
You might not get paid today, but it's going to come back to you. If nothing else, I bet you sleep very well at night compared
I
to
do.
a lot of other
I do,
people.
except for the ones I can't save, except for the ones where I just can't, they're in a situation where they ran out of time before they got a hold of me. That kills me to see that I've been calling somebody to help them, and then to see within a few weeks there's a sheriff's sale coming up. I'm thinking, just pick up the phone. Let me see if I can help you. So, but it's tough because everybody and their dog is calling saying, "Hey, I can buy your property." You got wholesalers calling, and you got other agents calling. But when I specialize in this, I mean, I call myself the pre-foreclosure specialist because I mean I've done it so often, and that's my goal.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what has been one of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome in your career? I know you talked about the bankruptcy, which is huge, but other than that, what's been one of the biggest challenges that you've had
You
to
mean
have?
as far as real estate or just in general?
Just in general.
I'm a serial entrepreneur growing up. Like I've owned a couple businesses, started my first business at 9 years old. I've always thought outside the box. And so my biggest challenge was working for corporations or working for individuals who hire you to do the job, but don't take your advice when you give suggestions to make things better. It's a struggle because yes, you need a job sometimes, right? But then also you don't see the change that would really help being made because you're not the boss or you're not the owner. They don't take
Yeah.
that seriously. So that's a big struggle of mine. When it comes to real estate, it's just losing one that I could have helped. That just hurts because, you didn't have to go that route. But my favorite wins are the ones that we get. Like I had one guy who I talked to for 3 months in a row, like back and forth, back and forth. And this was just last year. We had a deal in place. He just stopped responding to me. Deal fell through. He's dealing with some personal issues, child support issues, not, not feeling like himself. And so he kind of ghosted me for a little while. And then he says, "Hey man, I just got served by the sheriff's department. They're gonna do a sheriff's sale in 30 days. Can you still help me?" And I was able to get his house sold through an investor with 4 days to spare before the bank took it. And so
That's
it didn't have to be that close, but it made me feel good. And it was really he lost some money on the deal. Had the deal I had initially with him set up would have put about 60K in his pocket. He ended up walking away with like 15. But still, he still got to avoid the foreclosure and kind of get his life back on track.
yeah, walking away with 15,000, although it's not as nice as 60,000, that's better than walking away with nothing and a foreclosure on your record.
Absolutely, because most of them stay anywhere between 3 to 5, 3 to 7 years based on what type of loan you got. So yeah,
Yeah. And then I mean, you have to have a place to live. And so trying to find another place to live with a foreclosure on your record, I'm not saying that it's impossible. It just is, it's another stumbling block that you have to overcome to be able to find a place to live. So I think that's really cool that you not only can you put stuff on the MLS and sell it as a real estate agent, but you have these investors in your pocket who can come in and save the day when everything else fails. You can keep them from foreclosure.
exactly.
That's a really cool spot to be. So if somebody wants to get into real estate,
Okay.
what tips would you give them to get started?
I would tell them, yes, it does cost to get a license, right? But it's definitely something that you can always fall back on. As many state licenses as you can get, you should get them. I used to have a life insurance license years ago, but I would tell them to find their niche. It may be, you know, commercial, right? It may be land, it may be the traditional residential real estate, but finding a niche, finding a mentor who is willing to help you and show you the ropes. The biggest hurdles that new realtors have is that most homeowners don't want the rookie salesperson. Most new agents end up being buyer's agents. They do most of the legwork. There's a saying in real estate that listers last. And so eventually you want to learn to get some listings, but it's tough to get that experience until you have your first one. But I would say definitely, get a mentor and really just get your license and get the experience and pick an area, pick a niche. Because there's so many now. It's not just what I mentioned. There's also specifically helping people, older people who are transitioning from nursing from a residential to a nursing home. There's a certain certification you can get that. So as many certifications that you can get also bolsters your resume too as a realtor. So it's education is the key. The more you learn, the more you earn. It's huge in real estate.
Okay. So you talked about buyer's agents and listers agents.
Mhm.
What's the difference in those?
Well, okay, so from a monetary standpoint, the I think listing agents sometimes, yes, they have experience, but basically they're the ones that go in, do the listing appointment, and get the customers to list their property for whatever the property value they feel it would go for. There are challenges with that, but you kind of do less work. Yes, you're marketing that property, it's on the MLS, you're doing open houses, but you're not the one as a buyer's agent, you're not driving around showing different properties over and over and over again. So the buyer's agents work a little harder because they're showing multiple properties to their buyers. Listing agents, they just list the property and then they're on to the next listing appointment, things like that. So and also too, if you're experienced, you have the avenue of being able to bring previous clients to your new clients so you can kind of sell the property like that as well. Um, but yeah, the buyer's agents I say would say are more busy. They do
Okay.
more
So
legwork than the sellers.
a listing agent represents the seller, the
Correct.
person who currently owns the house. They get a set fee, which is typically around 3%, depending on where you are and what it can be anywhere from 2 to 5%, typically around 3%. They Their job is to go and find homes that are ready to be listed or sellers who are ready to list their home.
Correct.
And once they do that, their job, they find it, they get it listed, and they sit it and they forget it, sort of, right?
Sort of, yeah, sort of.
Sort of. The buyer's agent, they represent the person who's buying. And
Hmm.
so if, like you were saying, if I'm a buyer and you're the buyer's agent, you're now going to be driving me all over creation. We could go look at 20 houses, spending your gas, spending your time, and I could look at all 20 of them and be like, I don't like any of these. I don't even want to be in that area. I'm going to go somewhere else.
Right.
And you just spent a bunch of time and nothing happened. But the listing agent, they went and found that one house and it's up there, and they're going to have a dozen or so buyer's agents showing that house for them.
Correct.
And so there is a different set of skills that are required for a listing agent and a buyer's agent. And that's why the buyer's agent is the starting point, But the real goal is to be that listing agent.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. The more you want to, the more you list, the longer you last. That's kind of the mantra. But I can say that I started out my first deal, and what's funny is this. My first deal, my first traditional real estate deal was I called my brother, his landlord, as an investor. I said, "Hey, I've got my license now. If you want to look at a property or me to help you run comps for a property, let me know. I've got my license now. I'm not just a wholesaler." Okay, great. Because I'm not in the market right now. My wife shut me off and I can't buy anymore, but I'll keep you in mind. About a week later, I get a call from a young lady. Hey, you know my godfather. I said, your godfather? You know Brian? Oh yeah. I just got pre-approved for a mortgage, and I want to buy a house. I want to be able to, and I was like, wow. So I got my first every deal from talking to an investor whose niece or whatever, goddaughter, was looking for a property. And so I learned a lot with that first deal, but I learned so much more by being a buyer's agent than a listing because there was so many a deal I did, we turned in 13 offers for one client. We looked at houses and they were from huge, everything that could happen to an agent happened to me in that, meaning that I had an out-of-state buyer who didn't want to get pre-approved. They just wanted to wait for a contingency to sell their house first before they, bought something. And then they still wanted me to submit deals. And these houses were anywhere from 300 to $500,000 we were looking at. And yes, they had the credit, but they didn't want to get pre-approved for anything yet. They wanted to be contingent. Well, it's hard to be competitive when you say, hey,
yeah.
we'll come in at over asking price, but we have to sell my other house in Houston first. So we lost 13 deals later, 13 offers later, we
Offers.
finally found them a perfect house. But that one buyer, I learned everything. I learned how to back out of the contract. I learned how to do addendums. I learned how to do everything with that one customer. So I think every agent should cut their teeth as a buyer side to begin with because it teaches you that it's not as pretty as you see on TV. It's not you just walk into a listing appointment and you just land a deal. There's real work involved.
Oh, for sure. And I wasn't trying to say that you should not be a buyer's agent,
Yeah,
right? Every good agent, every good listing agent has put their time in to learn the ropes on the buyer's agent side.
exactly.
But your goal should be to get out there, be
Hmm.
that buyer's agent, be the best buyer's agent that you can be, learn everything as quickly as possible, and start getting those listings.
Yeah, because now that's my first sell. They bought land somewhere else, and now guess who they called to sell their property? I'll be listing on the 14th of this month. Me. So
Nice.
it turned
Nice.
into a list after my first, buyer side. So
Yeah, and I also was talking about the compensation for a listing agent, right? They get anywhere from 2 to 5%, depending on where it is. Five is maybe a little bit high, maybe it's closer to 4%. On the buyer's agent side, my understanding is you get anywhere from like 2 to 3%. And so,
so in Oklahoma, the laws have changed a little bit. There's been some changes since
okay,
the big lawsuit, but normally it was 6% was the going rate around Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was 3% to the buyer side, 3% to the sellers, to the listing agent. That's kind of the standard. People still do that. It does fluctuate. Some sellers, some selling agents or listing agents, say, "Hey, I want to do 3%, and I'll get you, 2%," or it just depends on how you negotiate, with the seller. Because the seller, at the end of the day, the seller's the one that pays everybody. So,
mhm, yeah. And so the end payment for a listing agent tends to be a little bit higher. Now, listing agent does have marketing fees that the buyer's agent doesn't have to take in consideration. So there's a lot of give and trade as far as the compensation. I think at the end of the day on a deal, they probably end up about the same
mhm.
of what they pocket and take home. The big difference is the amount of work and effort that it was given. I'm not saying that it's hard. It's not. Sorry, I'm not saying that it's not hard to be a listing agent because continuously finding homes to sell is not an easy gig.
Exactly.
Uh,
The skill.
just like continuously finding buyers is not easy, but typically there's more buyers. They're easier to find,
Correct.
although a lot of those are tire kickers.
Yeah.
And so you need to go through the gauntlet of being a buyer's agent to be a really good listing agent, is what I'm getting
Correct.
at. So let's shift gears here. I'm loving this discussion, but let's just shift gears here a little bit. I want to talk about work-life balance. It's a
Okay.
buzzword. It's what's going around. Everybody's talking about it. You're an accountant by day, real estate advocate by night. What is work-life balance to you? And is it even a thing or necessary?
No, I mean, I'm in a unique position to where my kids are grown. I've got the free time to do this now. I'm a big advocate for work-life balance. I believe that you have to have some downtime. But for me, I've been doing, what I do in accounting for so long is simple, it's easy, automatic. So I don't need a lot of downtime. But I also know that real estate, based on what I do, the type of real estate that I do, I don't have as much work as a typical agent does. I'm not closing as many deals because my deals are structured a little differently. My deals are a little more difficult to get to the table all the time. So for me, I think it's important, but yeah, I don't have it just kind of like what deals are going on is when, yeah, I take time off or not take time off.
Yeah, I really like this topic. I don't know that I'm always the best with work-life balance,
Hmm.
but I do believe that being present can make up for a lot of imbalance.
Exactly.
Um, if you're at home with your family 12 hours a day and you're scrolling Facebook, are you really there? If you're at work
Yeah,
for 12 hours a day working, but you're not being productive, are you really there? Because you're thinking about being at home, right?
exactly.
Now, if you're at home and you're only able to be with your family for 2, 3 hours a day, if you're there, you're present, you're engaging with them, those few hours that you're spending with your kids, with your spouse, with your family, with your friends, those are going to be much more impactful than if you were there all day disengaged.
Exactly.
And so to me, work-life balance is more about being engaged and instead of letting life happen to you, happen to life, make life happen. Um, so it sounds like things are going pretty well for you over there with the accounting during the day and just helping as many people as you can in the evenings and on the weekends with the real estate advocacy stuff, which I think the way you do that is really cool. Try to save people's homes. Um, People are looking uh, towards the future and how they can create passive income to
Hmm.
either enhance or even replace their active income. What are your thoughts about this?
I think finding that right thing. There's so many opportunities out there that are presented to people. But when you do look for something that when you want to become passive, make sure you have an interest in it. Don't make sure it's not like a fly by night or what's new type of thing. Really research that and figure out, can I do this, forever type of thing.
Yeah,
Whether it's investing in stock or whatever like that, or even just home ownership, renting out properties, find something that you enjoy doing. I would recommend that.
yeah. You say home ownership. I hear that's not as passive as people make it out to be.
It can be cumbersome. It can be a lot of work. But it also allows you, it isn't just the income passively immediately, but it's also building equity, and having
Yeah,
long-term. I mean, because at the end of the day, you can always, borrow against that property that you had, the extra property you have, or use that money to, borrow from to buy another property. So it's a slower process than some places, but it's just something that real estate will always have value, I think.
yeah. It's definitely a strategy. It's definitely an opportunity.
Hmm.
Uh, I think the key to real estate is knowing what you're willing to put into it and what you have to get out of it. And if you're
Exactly.
okay with both sides of that coin, then go for it. But if you look at it and you understand everything that's going into it, and you're like, no, I don't want that. That sounds like another job to me. Then maybe you should find something else that's passive.
Exactly.
Or
Agree.
maybe it's just something else that's more suited to you. With all passive incomes, there has to be some form of work that was done at some point that's either active right now or that was previous endeavors that got you to the investor standpoint that you can then invest in somebody else's opportunity and they can go and do it. And
Right.
so it's really understanding what your risk tolerance is, understanding what your active nature is, like how much you want to be involved in it, and what you want to do towards that. Um, well, as we're wrapping up our interview, what exciting plans or initiatives do you have over the next 6 to 12 months?
Honestly, just really, unfortunately, because the way the economy is, I'm seeing quite a few more foreclosures pop up. And so that just means I need to ramp up my reaching out to homeowners to try to help them, education. I team up sometimes with title companies to give like seminars or a resource to say, hey, if you're behind on your mortgage, let's do these things before you get to the pre-foreclosure portion. Or if you're at the pre-foreclosure portion, how can we get you, some help? Because education really is the key to helping people that that I help. So, but other than that, man, just being hyper focused on the more foreclosures that I'm seeing and gearing up for that.
Nice. Well, Orlando, thank you so much for your time today and sharing some insights and tips with us and diving into the real estate world that you're involved in. If people want to connect with you, what should they do?
They can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I actually have a Facebook page, and also I'm on Instagram too. But the best way to reach me is would be LinkedIn. Orlando Robinson on LinkedIn. So
Fantastic. Again, thank you for your time. Appreciate you being here. And guys, this is the end of another episode of the Success in Motion podcast. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks for tuning into Success in Motion. Want to share your story? Visit successinmotionpodcast.com/guest to apply and be featured on the show.